I just want to make sure that I have the pronunciation. Is it Ellis Leigh?
Yep.
Hildie McQueen?
Yes.
A.M. Griffin?
Yep.
Melissa Keir?
Yep.
Jennifer Wedmore?
Yes.
And C.D. Gorri.
Perfect.
Great.
All right, and we are now streaming.
Hi. Welcome to Romance, Our Favorite Escape. I'm your moderator, Frances Rondon. I'm here with Ellis Leigh, Hildie McQueen, A.M. Griffin, Melissa Keir, Jennifer Wedmore, and C.D. Gorri today. I'm really excited to welcome you all here today. And just as to get started, if you'd like to introduce yourself a little bit, let us know who you are, what you write, and where you're calling from. You can start us off, Ellis. That'd be great.
Hi, Ellis Leigh. I write paranormal romance. I dabble in sci-fi romance. I also write contemporary and romantic suspense as Kristen Hart. And I co-write short, tropey, erotic romance with Brighton Walsh as London Hale. I am calling in from the northwest suburbs of Chicago, Illinois.
Next, C.D. Gorri, can you tell us a bit about yourself?
Hey, everybody. I'm C.D. Gorri. I write paranormal romance and young adult urban fantasy. Mainly shifter romance is what I tend to focus on. And I'm calling in from New Jersey.
Hildie?
Hi, everybody. I'm USA Today bestselling author Hildie McQueen, and I am in Augusta, Georgia right now. I write medieval Highlanders and also some American Western historicals. A little bit of everything. Some contemporaries as well. So I'm excited to be here.
Melissa?
Hi, I'm Melissa Keir, and I write Western romance, small town romance, and I have a shifter, and I am calling from Murrells Inlet, South Carolina.
A.M. Griffin?
Hi, everybody. I am A.M. Griffin. I write. Can you see me or hear me?
Yep, we can do that.
Okay. Sorry. I write sci-fi romance. I also write paranormal and urban fantasy. And I am calling from Michigan. It's nice. It's nice weather out here today, so I'm happy about that and glad to be here.
Okay, and Jennifer?
Hi, everybody. I write pretty much every genre. They all have some form of romance in it, whether it be steamy to clean to my co-writer putting the romance in the story. But I like to genre hop, and I'm calling from Central Florida.
Great. Okay, welcome, everyone. I guess just to get started, if you'd like to talk a bit about why writing romance is a good escape for you, we'd love to hear all about it.
Okay, well, I'll start. So as you guys know, I write Highlanders. And so one of the things about writing Highlanders to me is that total escape from this world, different country for me, but also the fact that, to be taken away by these heroes and taken to a different time is amazing escape. And I always like to compare the cowboys that I write to the Highlanders, because to me, Westerns cowboys are the Highlanders of America. They have the same thing, horses and, the strength and the alpha heroes that, conquer things. So for a lot of readers, and for me, writing it is totally escaping from everything that I know to all this unknown different world.
Yeah, agreed. Romance it takes you out of your current situation, which really any genre takes you out. But in romance, you are guaranteed that happily ever after, no matter how bad things get, no matter what happens in the story. You know, at the end, there's going to be a lovely, satisfying conclusion, and you're going to walk away just thrilled and at peace with the story. So that's why it's my favorite escape.
Well, and I think that ties in so nicely because in our world today, we look at and hear so many negatives, we hear so much downers. And so with romance, we've got that happy ending. So we've got a good feeling at the end. So as we walk away from after we've finished that book, we feel uplifted, we feel happy, we feel satisfied. So it gives us that escape as well because it gets us away from the garbage of every day.
And I wholeheartedly agree with that. Just that happily ever after and how it's a guaranteed in romance. And I think that's why a lot of people write romance and a lot of people read romance because you are guaranteed that happily ever after. You get to immerse yourself in that story, and like someone just said, no matter what happens in that story, no matter what, I mean, the writer can take that heroine or hero through so many different twists and turns. But no matter what, like you stick with it because at the end it's gonna be a great outcome for them. And so that's why I write it.
It's funny. My husband will tell you I'm not like a big romantic person. My twin sister has always been the hopeless romantic. But when I write, if there's not romance in the story, it's like something's missing. It's just something that I have to have in the story.
That's great. In terms of the books you've written, which story has sucked you in the most and why?
That is a tough question because when we have these books, they're almost like our babies, and so it's almost like asking us to have a favorite. I think that the one that has sucked me in the most is one of my Wilder sisters' stories. It's a Christmas accident, and I took a real life incident that happened to my mom and included it, changed it, made it more fictionalized, but put it into the book. And it always gives me that uplifting feeling that there is something more out there, whether you believe in a deity or the world around us, but there is something more that makes life worth living. So
I think for me, I have to say it was my very first Western. I always refer to this book because we're not supposed to have a favorite, and I don't have a favorite of the books that I've written, but Adeline, who is the heroine and Where the Four Winds Collide, her story just totally took me away because at that time, when I wrote that book, I was writing paranormal. So for me to have the story come to me because she just told me her entire story, and I couldn't stop thinking about it until I wrote it. So in a way, her story, Where the Four Winds Collide, was my very first Western, and it was a story that to this day stays with me. So I think that's probably mine.
For me, when I write, it's all in one universe. So I always go back to the first book, and that was Wolf Moon. And it's a young adult urban fantasy, so very little romance, but it's told from her point of view. So you do kind of get that, kind of a budding relationship with her and her friends, with her and her future romantic interests. But, that's where the whole universe begins. So I always go back to that one because even though it's not directly a romance, not a true romance, it was the start for the entire series. Well, for multiple series that take place in the same setting.
For me, it's I even though everyone says you're not supposed to have a favorite because they're all your babies, I do have my favorites. And right now, it has to be the Game Warden's Mate, the sci-fi story that I released last year. And I only say that because I'm currently writing in that world. And so I'm just so immersed in that world because I have to think about the rules. They're on a planet. you know, a different planet, and you know they have aliens hunting them. So there's all these rules I have to remember and think about. And so right now I am totally just like in that world. So that's it for me right now.
I would say mine is in my second paranormal series, my Devil's Dire series. It's a book called Savage Silence, and it's the one that sticks in my head the most, and the one that I kind of revisit in my head the most, because that heroine is, I think, the most personal to me. There was an event in her life that is her motivation throughout the story that is similar to something that happened to me, and so it is the one that I kind of will always go back to. Books they hold such a huge place in my heart, but Savage Silence is the one that gut reaction when somebody asks what's my favorite. That's the one that comes to mind.
I think my favorite book is actually, it's considered dystopian, but it's kind of not really a dystopian book. I kind of did a little different spin on it. It's got probably the least amount of romance of any of my books, because they were stuck in a house for 6 months. It was really difficult to draw in love, but I didn't want to make it overtly romantic for that exact reason. But it was the third book I wrote, and it just, like, within a week I had the whole thing done, and it's still my favorite book. I don't know. I keep trying to write the sequel and I haven't gotten very far in it. So I think because I'm so afraid, because I loved that one so much, the second one won't live up to it.
How much of yourselves do you guys put into your characters? I know there's a lot of people who put little pieces of themselves, but how much of your writing is touched upon things that happen to you, or things that you've heard, or things that have done in your life?
I have to try really hard not to make my heroines me, because they're all like outspoken and speak their mind, and I'm like, wait, tone it back, because medieval times they didn't do that. So a lot of times, a lot of my heroines have a lot of me. So writing them more of a shy or demure, or different. Some people are just quiet. It doesn't mean they're less strong. I have a hard time doing that because I'm so out there most of the time. So, but as far as the stories and things that have happened from my life, I think we all draw. I think we all draw from, we can't help but not pull experiences out from our own lives and put it into the stories. And I think that's part of that, what creates our creativity, right?
Oh, I think that's absolutely true. Yeah, I mean, don't we all have to kind of draw from ourselves, even if it's just little things?
I agree. It's really hard. I have a really hard time, like Hildy said, not making all my heroines the same, which would be me, outspoken. You know, all my heroines cuss a lot because I cuss a lot, and it's really hard. And I'll go through, like, some of my first drafts. I'll go and I'll have to intentionally say I don't want them to cuss a lot, and so I'll you know make up words or just leave that out. And then by the last draft, I'm like putting all these cuss words back in because it doesn't sound authentic to me, if they aren't who they are. And so I have a hard time with that.
Yeah, I think I think all my characters have at least a tiny bit of me. I think it's almost impossible not to. Even when Brighton and I were co-writing, we have a book called Talk Dirty to Me, which it's the female mayor of the town falls in love with this younger firefighter in town, and kind of that whole a woman being in a man's place, like a traditional male role. That came from that inspiration, and that drive came from me because I'm a woman that has been since 97. I've worked in what is typically a male dominated industry. I still have a day job, not just an author. And I'm still there. And so that's where that comes from, is that drive of, here's my experience being a woman in a male driven industry, and how different it is than being, a romance author where that's kind of a female driven industry. So I think there's always at least some little bit. It could be something tiny, but there's always some little bit of me in there.
That's great. In terms of romance and not amongst like your own writing, is there any kind of romantic media, like TV show, movie, or someone else's book that you love the romance so much that you can go back time and again to reread or rewatch?
Katie Wild's Hellfire Rider series, always constant reread. Rebecca Weatherspoon's Sweet series, the So Sweet, I think is the first one, is another one. It's my happy place. TV, I watch all reality TV. I just can't deal with anything heavy. So I go back to those to watch kind of that supposedly real life romance happening on the screen. Yeah, absolutely.
I like the little bit of teasing romance between characters so that it's not like out there, but we sense that underlying sensual current between people. So Gilmore Girls and the tension between Laura Lee and Luke, I just love that kind of tension. So yeah, I like to watch them. Sometimes I'll go back and play certain episodes just to watch that because I love that underlying. It's hard to write that too.
Well,
I tend.
go ahead.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Go ahead.
I tend to watch like thrillers and mind screw up type shows, so I don't really watch a lot of romance. And for reading, it would have to be back like when I first started reading, and it was like Julie Garwood and the historical of that time. I don't even read historical anymore, but those are still the ones that they're always my go-to books. They're ones that I love and will never, like, I think I have 100 copies because I keep buying them every time I find them.
Well, and I have the movies like P.S. I Love You, and just rewatched Empire Records again, and Valley Girl, all of those movies that show the love happening between the characters, or finding love and letting go. There's just something about those. I do have a bunch of authors on my keeper shelf, and I will reread over and over again. Like there's something about Eve and Rourke from J.D. Robb's series that just make you want to find this guy and have him have this gorgeous, rich house and live there forever.
I love that couple. That is an amazing couple. Yeah. She's so different. So as far as she's so strong. They're both very strong, but in a way they still seem to work.
Is there a favorite trope or subgenre that you like to read?
For me, it's historicals. I don't even write historicals. I couldn't even begin to try to figure out how to write historicals because of all the research needed in it, and I just couldn't be bothered with all of it. But that's probably why I write sci-fi and paranormal, because I can make up my own world and it's me doing the research. But for historicals, that's my favorite. Like, if you find me a duke who's like a brooding duke with a strong heroine who's like from the other side, who's really not up to his snuff, and I'm like all in. I just can't get enough.
I do too. And you know what? I love cowboy romance, and I don't write it, and I live in New Jersey and I grew up here, but I do. I love it. And I always go back to it whenever I need that escape.
I think I read more romantic suspense than anything, and I write historicals, obviously, but I like to go to the contemporary, not the straight contemporary, more of the romantic suspense. I think that's what draws me the most.
It's funny that we're all doing where we're reading, it's not what we're writing in, because my favorite one to go to is the paranormal romance. The shifters, the sci-fi, all of those, rather than what I write in, which is the cowboys, the small towns.
My favorite's YA dystopian, anything in that genre, that subgenre that's up there. But I won't write anything YA. I swear way too much to try.
So you're a swearer like me.
Oh yeah, I tried to write a clean romance for a box set, and it was so difficult because I wasn't allowed to swear. There couldn't be sex, and I'm like, this is all I do. I don't know what to do with this book. It was terrible.
I wrote a YA series. It's a 3-book series. I was writing for EC, which was, erotica, and my kids were complaining that they, couldn't read anything that I wrote, and so they were younger then. So I actually wrote them this 3-book YA series that they have not read, but the whole thing. I was trying not to get these kids to cuss. And then I think in one line of the book, the teacher says, "Don't cuss, stop cussing," to one of the kids. And he goes, "We're in a freaking alien invasion. Why can't I cuss?" And I'm like, from there on, these kids are cussing. But that was my failed attempt at YA that I don't even promote, but it's for my kids. That's funny.
Ellis, did you?
I'm kind of with everybody else. I don't really like, if I'm writing paranormal, I'm not reading paranormal. I'm reading small town. I'm reading rom-coms, light, funny, usually, at least lately. So yeah, those are my kind of, if I'm writing contemporary, I tend to be reading more outside of that. But I always go back to anything that's got a little humor, a little snark, and a little naughtiness. Those are my faves.
So as writers, how do you prefer to read your sort of escape romances? Are you guys on the e-reader train, or do you need your hardbacks or paperbacks, or what's your favorite way? What really gets you kind of sucked into the story?
E-reader or audiobooks. Yeah, I read on my phone like all through the day. As I've got 5 minutes here and there, I'll just grab my phone and kind of read on that. But also audiobooks. Yeah, those have become a big thing in my life over the last year or so.
Yeah, I read on my phone a lot, or at least I used to. Now I read on an older Kindle that was my kids', just because I don't want to be interrupted by constant messages and phone calls when I read. If I'm taking that time for myself, I want it. I'm greedy for it. But definitely ebooks, because I just don't have the space. I can't keep buying paperbacks. I don't have any room.
Ebooks for me. I have a Kindle, and that used to just be where I would read from. I do like paper books though. So if I find a paper book like at the grocery store, I'll, instead of just going to my phone and buying it, I'll buy the paperback. But ebooks really. And then I think the past maybe year or year and a half, I've just been reading on my phone, and I really need to go back to my Kindle because when you're on your phone, you're just like this. But I really do need to go back to my Kindle.
I read on my iPad, and I don't have any interruptions. It must not be connected or something. I don't have my Facebook or anything like that on my iPad, so I think that's why. But that's what I read at night. I turn it on kind of dim, and mostly I love the feeling of a book in my hands. And then one thing that bugs me about the iPad or Kindle is that you can't see how much of the book is left, even if it gives you a percentage. I kind of want to know where I'm at in the book, so that's why I love having a physical book. But like you guys say, there's too many books, so I read on my iPad and just try to figure out where I'm at in the book.
I have a few keeper authors that I will purchase their entire set anytime it comes out, and it doesn't matter if it's hardcover or what. Of course, like I mentioned, the JD Robb series, I have all 50 of those. All of the different ones that are like that, I will make an effort for, but the other ones I'm all ebook as well.
And are you guys able to sort of take that time? Like, do you have like a reading nook, or do you like to read in the bathroom, in bed, lock your doors, or is life just not possible for you to do that? How do you like to escape when you read?
Well, you go.
I was say anywhere and everywhere. If I've got 2 minutes, my phone's open and I'm reading.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Just, with all the kids and all the noise all the time wherever I can, even if it's while I'm waiting for water to boil, when I'm cooking, or for coffee. That's when I read.
I read at night in bed, and I don't have any kids, but my disruption are the dogs. I think that for the most part, though, I like to read at night after my husband's asleep, because as soon as I pick up my iPad and start reading, he has questions or something to say. That's like the nature of things, I guess. And so I wait and lay in bed and read and stay up way too late.
I'm like you, Hildie. I will read at night. Sometimes I'll try and do my laptop and do my writing at night, and then I use the reading as a reward. So I got to get this much done so that I can read.
Yeah, if I'm listening to an audiobook, it's usually during the day while I'm at work, while I'm running around at home, while I'm doing errands and kind of mindless stuff. But reading is like at night in bed. That's my calm down time.
I can read anywhere because most days it's on the phone now. Just if I'm staying at line somewhere, if I'm waiting for my mom, to come outside, I'm picking her up to take her somewhere. It's everywhere, but mostly, usually, I'm like Melissa. I use it as a reward because I am such an avid reader. I mean, I can read, a couple of books a week. So I'll say, okay, I have to finish, one or two chapters of the project I'm working on, and then I'll get to start like this new Dean Koontz. It's as a reward.
I love that. I love the idea of reading as a reward. That's great. But I'm the same. I read a few books a week because, it's just what I do. Everyone else has the TV. I don't get to pick ever.
Have any of you guys ever gone back and read one of your own books just as an entertainment? I have never done that.
I do it all the time. I do it all the time, and it cracks my husband up because I actually write the books that I want to read, and so I'm thinking of something. I'm like, oh, I need to write that, so I'll write it. And what I do is I'll write a book, and you're so tired of it when you write a book. By the time you're done, you don't want to see it again. But I'll go and I'll put it up for pre-order. I'll pre-order it, and then when it comes out, I'll give it a couple of weeks, and then I'll read it like it's a new book. And I'll just be sitting, in my bed reading. And my husband's like, "Are you going to bed now?" I'm going, "Wait, I have to finish this chapter." He goes, "Did you write? Are you reading what you wrote?" And I'm like, "Yes." I said, "But I have to know if she takes them back or not." He's like, "Oh my God, you are so crazy." I do it. I've read some of my books like 4 or 5 times. I like reading them. I don't know if anybody else likes them, but I am like,
that's awesome.
I read my own stuff. I'm like my biggest fan.
Nice. Yeah, I don't necessarily read mine for like just out of the blue. I'm just going to go back and read one, but I write in so many different worlds that I rotate through them. So when it's time to write in a world that I haven't visited in a while, I reread the entire series. So I've read some of my books. I mean, I'm just started working on book 6 in my vigilante justice romantic suspense. So I've read those first books 5 times at this point. And I enjoy them. I really like them when I go back to them. They're just not something I specifically grab to sit down and read it. But when I get to, they put a smile on my face again. Yeah.
I'm not someone who's gone back to read mine unless I need to do that for something, like I've got something coming up that I need to go back and read for the world. I find that I get really nervous about, oh, I should have done it this way, or, because I learned from my earlier books, I learn and change. And so I'm like, oh, I should have done this differently. And then I end up editing it and I just get frustrated.
I get it. There's like a way to get around that, and that's why I buy the book like a reader. I think I put myself into a different headspace. If it was just on my computer and I was going back to reread it for some reason, then I'm like in writer mode and editing mode. But when I go and I buy it and then I wait a couple of weeks and then I open it up with the intention that I'm just a reader. So I might find mistakes and I might say, well, I could have did this differently, but I'm just a reader then. So it's a different, I definitely have to put myself in like a different headspace when I do read it.
So, are there any questions that you guys want to ask each other?
So I do. We had talked about how we put ourselves into our books. So where do you get the guys? Where do you get your heroes? Are they your husband? Are they the significant other? Are they your first boyfriend? Where do those people come from?
What are you trying to get me in trouble?
Of course.
I would say the same thing with the heroines. My heroes come from a variety of people that I know, that I've experienced, that I want, things that characteristics I'd like to see in someone. And sometimes characters just have their own voice. They're just kind of there, barking in my head until I get them out.
I think I don't know if it's true, but I've heard the saying that women love alphas but marry betas. And my husband, I would say, is a little bit in between there, but I write very, very, very alpha males. I've only written one beta, and it was really hard. But I think it's the culmination of that more bigger than life hero that I love. The idea, I love the idea of that man, but I wouldn't necessarily, I don't think I could marry that man. I guess, well, if I was forced to, but. But I think my heroes come from that bigger than life embodiment, because when I was single, I dated mostly alpha males. Didn't necessarily want to marry them, but they were so much fun.
Well, yeah, I'd agree with Hildie. Like all the little bits, some little bit of some person becomes that hero. And same, I write these really tough, really strong, really kind of demanding heroes in these books. And obviously, as you're reading them, I like to read the same kind of heroes in the books. So as you're reading them, it's like, oh, swoon, he's so strong. But there's a part in the back of my brain that's like, yeah, I would no, we would be no, that would be a fight. But suspension of disbelief, and I'm in a different world, so I enjoy it as an escape from my reality.
For me, my aliens I think are just that, alien, so I can make up anything. But most of my characters, aside from a few, I can, like, I'm editing a book right now, and I describe him as lean, and that's my husband. So, and then I think about it, and most of especially my human characters are lean, and I try not to, but a lot of them do have my husband's personality, and it's kind of hard to break off, from that. But when I, think of like my
Well,
my
aren't
perfect
you sweet
guy,
and in love?
well, well, I did marry my high school sweetheart, and so it's like a lot of
We have
years
a
of like the same guy, and I'm like, oh, he's lean but muscular and strong yet sensitive.
we have one of the readers who suggested maybe Jason Momoa. So do celebrities get into your books in any way?
Yes, Jason Momoa has been inspiration for a couple of my characters.
Yeah, me
So
too.
yes, he is lovely and fun, and I don't want to know anything about him in real life. The fantasy of him is more than enough.
Hmm. For my first sci-fi book, Dangerously Mine, I used Jason Momoa, like that kind of look for my alien. So yeah, he's definitely.
Mine is always Henry Cavill.
You said always?
Always,
Superman.
almost all my heroes are dark hair, blue eyes, and muscular. Dark hair, blue eyes, and muscular. I'm like, I need to move on. So one time sometimes I do make light brown hair and blue eyes and muscular. But I love Henry Cavill. That style of guy is my big thing. Dark hair and light eyes.
Well, that's fabulous about being an author, right? Is we can create our heroes based on, what we like.
So the opposite of that, do you guys ever create a character that you are somebody you desperately want to kill or you've had frustration with, and you're like, oh, I can't wait to kill that person, or oh, they're going to die now in the most horrific way?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yes. Don't make an author angry.
And killing them is so satisfying, isn't it? Because then you're like, oh yes, he gets his head shot off by a blaster, and then you're like, no, I want him to suffer a little bit. He gets blasted in the chest and he falls on the ground and wriggles for a while.
I had a friend of mine, and she's crazy, and she's like, I want to be in one of your books and make me be like different. So I said, okay. So I made her like this really floozy girl who ends up in prison for embezzlement, and then she tries to get out of it by sleeping with the prison guards, and it was just so much fun. And she's like so excited. So many times we went out with friends, and she's like, I'm in one of her books. I'm this floozy who goes to prison for embezzlement. She thought it was funny.
I put my mom, well, I used to in my Loving Dangerously series. I have my mom in there a couple of times, and my mom's name is Diana. I hope she's not watching. Hi, Mom, if you are, but I doubt it. Her name is Diana, and me and my siblings call her Dirty Diana or Dirty D. And in my sci-fi books, there's someone who's called Diana, who is like the hoe of the bunch.
Oh no.
And I'm just like, it just cracks me up to no end. Like whenever like they're going to someone's room and here Diana is leaving, buttoning up her dress. It just cracks me up so much. So like, ha ha ha. I don't know why, but yeah, it just cracks me up. The little things make us happy. I love my mom though, but yeah, I just Dirty D. Mm.
A friend of mine put my husband in a book. I couldn't do it. It was actually before I was writing, but she did it for me, and he wasn't a good character. I found out after she wrote it that she did it too, so it was like, oh, okay.
Did she kill you?
Thankfully not. But I did have another friend put me in her book as a prostitute that was killed by a vampire that liked blood play, but he was a serial killer too. So it was pretty nasty. I was like, you need to cut that part from the book because that is absolutely horrible.
Oh wow. So I never killed my mom. I just made her, very sexual.
Well, now everybody's going to be reading your books looking for Diana and wondering about your mom.
She's actually really, she's very, very sweet and approved. And so I just love poking fun at her. And she has all the books too. She loves them. She won't read them for that reason, but she loves them. And she, had me autograph them and she put them on her bookshelf. So it's all in good fun. She loves it.
So talking about that, do you guys have family members who read your books or not read your books? Like my father has read my books, which I think is hilarious because he's like 80 years old. And, this is definitely not anything he'd love to read, but he has read my books.
My very conservative, very traditional father read my first book, which has the word fuck in it like 57 times. And he never spoke to me about it, but he told my mother, I never knew she had a mouth on her like that. And he doesn't read them anymore, but he buys every one in paperback and puts them on a shelf in the basement. And he never says a word. That's very much how he is. He never says a word about it, but they're all there. If I go to their house for a visit, they're all on the shelf, and he's obviously very proud. His youngest sister, my Aunt Susie, has read my books, and I got a Christmas card from her last year that said, I can't believe my brother's youngest daughter writes like this. And I couldn't tell if it was like a positive thing or if it was a scandalous thing. I still don't know because I'm not asking her. But yeah, it's awkward when that happens. My mom has a cousin who I've never met who has read my books and didn't know who I was because I write under pen names. And when she found out, she was so excited, and she keeps calling my mom and asking, like, can we meet? Can we go to lunch sometime? Can we do something? And I'm like, I don't know this woman. And why is she reading my books? As now that she knows that we're like related. Yeah, it's awkward sometimes, but It's fun. It's funny.
My nieces and nephews write my books. I think my daughter, I made her read one, and my oldest daughter, who Jennifer knows, and she's so funny. She's like, I just can't in my head. My mother writing sex scenes makes me feel weird. And I said, well, it's not your mother, it's Hildie McQueen. And she's like, okay, well, so she read one of them, but mostly it's kind of interesting to me. They kind of skip the generation. My sisters won't read them, but their kids do. Some of my nieces and nephews have a lot of my books.
My sisters read my books, and my little sister is, one of my biggest supporters. And every time we go somewhere, I have to tell her, don't tell people I write, because it's just not that kind of scene. And that's the first thing she says. She writes books. You need to go look up A.M. Griffin. And but so her and my dad, who just passed away, my dad, he wanted a book, and I said, okay, you can have it, but you cannot read it. You can just have it. And then when I saw him next, he's going, so I read your book. You write a lot about sex and you curse a lot. And I said, I'm not talking to you about this because you weren't supposed to read it. So, but yeah, he did. And so, yeah, my family, my mom won't read them because of the obvious, but my family do, which is nice. And my friends do, because they'll text me and they'll say, what happens to so and so? And I'm like, well, you have to finish the book.
Both of my sisters are authors. My mom travels with us to the conventions. So if you've met us at a convention, you've met, the core of my family. My oldest son's 19 and he's read some of my books. He's working on all of them. My 17-year-old, keeps taking copies, but I don't think he's actually read them. But my grandmother's almost 90 and she's read every one of them. The only thing she got confused on was the shifters and trying to explain to her what they were. Yeah, that was fun. But she reads my twin sister's MM books, and we kept telling her skip the sex. She's like, no, I'm really curious. I was like, oh my God.
I think most of my family who have tried reading my books have read the young adult. They stuck with the clean, which I said, okay, it's fine, because I probably don't want to discuss the other ones with them either. But, that's fine.
Well, my sisters read my first couple of books, and then they got really mad at me because they thought I was talking about my father and them. And I'm like, no, I'm not talking about you. I'm not talking about my father. Just because I used certain characteristics does not mean that I'm talking about my father. So I was like, oh, I just give up. I'm not even going to tell them what I'm doing anymore.
That's funny. My best friend from high school got in touch with me after I published my first young adult book. And I hadn't talked to her in maybe 5 years because she had moved to England. And she gave me a list of who she thought every character was based on from our high school. And we went to a very small all-girl Catholic high school in Hoboken, New Jersey. And this is what, she wanted to know if she was right. Like, is this person? Is this that person? And I'm like, no, this is fake. This is a fake fictional book. It's okay. But at least she wasn't angry.
Okay, we have a few minutes left. I know that some of our authors have giveaways, and you want to talk about them a little bit?
Okay, well, I'll start. I have, if you sign up for my readers group, and I know the link's going to be posted, then you will get a free book of your choice. And then I'm also going to be mailing out a gift door prize to someone that attended. I'll just go through the list and do a random number generator, and then I'll be giving away this swag bag with my new little Chihuahua logo and this matching coffee cup with the little Chihuahua.
Yay.
I would show you guys Lola, but she is not in the mood today to be making an appearance. My little Chiweenie.
I have a raffle copter that I think is being posted in the group. It's for a Amazon gift card and some signed swag that I'm going to mail out also.
I have already posted in the group once for a free copy of the second book of my romantic suspense series. The first book's already free. So I will post again for some of my paranormal. I'm not sure what I'm going to do yet, but I'll post again in that thread for how to get some of my non-free paranormal romances.
I am doing a giveaway of a free book if you sign up for my newsletter, and you can do that on my website, melissakeir.com.
And I am giving away a Amazon gift card, $5 Amazon gift card, and I will post a link in the group of how to get that.
And if they join my reader group, they can choose an ebook from my backlist. Pretty much anyone they have. I have them all on Booksprout.
Okay, great. So I have a couple more questions here. Going back in time, can you remember sort of what was the first romance that you lost yourself in?
For me, it was Joanna Lindsay's Captive Bride. And I actually went back and bought a copy of it about 12 months ago, and have kept it on my shelf here and reread it again.
That's mine too. I love that. Actually opened the door to Johanna Lindsay for me. I love that. I love that book. So that's mine. I'm stealing your answer too.
Michigan people have to stick together.
Yes.
I think mine was Jude Devereaux's Knight in Shining Armor. And it was funny because I had mentioned it somewhere, and two of my friends mailed me a copy because I said I can't find my copy anywhere. So now I have 2 copies of Knight in Shining Armor. That one and Bertha Small, which I shouldn't have been reading at the time because I was like 14, and it's really, really steamy. Sky O'Malley.
Mine is Saving Grace by Julie Garwood. I even, the main character's name was Gabriel, and my oldest son is Gabriel.
This is a hard question for me. I read so much. I don't know if I could pick just one. I think I started though really young, and I think I read all those Sweet Valley High books when I was like maybe 9, and they definitely were too old for me, but I read them anyway, and I have been reading ever since.
My brain is blanking on her name, and it's driving me. I actually have my phone in my hand, and I'm Googling to figure out. Everybody knows her. She's a very traditional, hugely successful romance author, has been for decades. She has a desk of her own books. Like her desk is pictures of her own books, which cracks me. Danielle Steele. There we go. Found her. Those are the first ones back when I was like in elementary school. I remember sneaking those books, and I still remember bits and pieces of certain ones where I was like, this was amazing. And something about this story really stuck with me. So those ones were probably my first introduction into romance.
How old were you guys when you started reading romance? I know for me, I was like, I found my first, as a cashier at a grocery store. And on the way to there, I used to pass this used bookstore, and I went in. And of course, the 3 for $1 books were the Harlequin Presents books. And so that's kind of, I was like, this is just for efficiency's sake. I was like, I get the most entertainment for the least amount of money. And I sort of fell in love with romance at that point. It was about 15. How old were you guys when you started reading romance?
11 or 12, probably. I would say I've gone back and read some of those books. I remember in 5th grade reading V.C. Andrews, and I've gone back and read some as an adult and been like, oh my goodness, I should not have been reading those at that age. But all the dirty parts just went right over my head. I was too young to even comprehend them. So it was more the story. But yeah, probably 10, 11, 12.
Yeah, I think you're right. Flowers in the Attic, right? Like I remember reading that very young. And then older, maybe 13 and 14, I started reading these cowboy romances by Diana Palmer, and they were Harlequin Presents, and they were just same thing. In the used bookstore, they were cheap, they were fun, and I bought tons of them.
Yeah, I think I started with Harlequins and probably about 12, 13. it started with Harlequins, and mostly, yeah, we went to the thrift store and bought the used little books, and they were addicting. So I remember reading quite a few of those a week.
I think I was like a freshman in high school. So probably, what was that, like 13, 14, something like that? I do remember reading around that time Fabio's book. Remember the model Fabio when he wrote his own book? I'm being like completely scandalized by it.
I was probably about 11. My mom was a huge romance reader, and so I would just take the books off of her shelf and start reading.
Okay, so we do have about 5 minutes left, so I'm going to open it to the panelists again. If there's any other questions you have for each other, we'd love to hear them.
I'd like to know what you guys are writing right now and what's on your docket to write next. Right now, I am writing a Highlander during Regency time, and I write medieval romance. So this is really kicking my butt. Me and Regency do not get along too many rules. So I've been having to do a lot of research. So that is what I'm writing next. And I think my next release is not for a while, and I can't even tell you what my next release is. I have one coming up on the 23rd that's called Hellish Highlander, which is the third in this Clan Ross series. So, yep, that's what I'm doing. What are y'all doing?
Next up on my list of books to write is a romantic suspense. So I'm returning to Vigilante Justice, my Vigilante Justice series, and kind of I think it's going to be the last book in the series. I'm pretty about this sure that it's going to be the last book in the series. So I've got to go back to that world and start again.
I'm working on a polar bear shifter series. It's due out in May. I'm almost finished with this. This is the second installment. It's a lot of fun. I like them. So I'm kind of in the middle of that right now.
I'm writing the fourth book in my The Hunt series, which is about humans that are being taken to a alien planet and they're being hunted for sport. I'm writing Miranda's character. She's the only one who is taken to the hunt who has children. So readers have been asking for her story to see how she survives. So that's what I'm writing now.
I'm working on a Christmas book or my cowboy box set and another Western romance, kind of doing both of them at the same time, just trying to keep busy.
I keep opening different documents. I just can't seem to focus on anything specifically right now. I've got the sequel to my dystopian started. I started like extending my sci-fi story that I have in a box set that I just got rights back. I've been working on a brand new story. I have a sad one. I'm just like all over the place, and I can't seem to focus on one specific thing right now. I keep hoping something will change and I can just say, okay, this is the one I'm going to do. But otherwise, I'll just jump around until one hits.
I find that a lot of creatives are having a hard time right now with this, what is it, a pandemic? So are you what's bothering you, Jennifer? And are you guys like finding it hard to concentrate on work, or is it not affecting that much?
For me, my mom and sister both work at doctor's offices and they have patients with it. So it's that constant fear for them. And then my husband has to go to work every day. So I'm always worried about him. And I have 3 kids home trying to homeschool. So it's just, I think it's everything all at once. But yeah, I think it's a big part of it for me.
Okay, well, I would like to thank all our panelists today. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us and to answer all our questions. It's been really great, and it's kind of fun that we've been able to do this from all across the continent, actually. So this is great. So yeah, thanks again, everyone, and it was really nice to meet you guys.
Thank you. I had a lot of fun.
Thank you so much.
That was a lot of fun. It was nice
Thank you,
meeting
everybody.
Thank you.
Nice meeting
Bye.
you.
Yes, nice meeting you all.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.